another episode of Pursuit. I'm Pastor Rick, joined here with Pastor Harper. And again, we are, I think this is our third episode, maybe the fourth episode of the Pursuit Abroad. We are traveling around the campus here at Salem. Due to the fact that we're moving some things around, our recording studio has been utilized now for the first grade class. It looks really good in there.
Yeah.
Today, we are in the campus ministries office at Salem Baptist Christian School, where I work as the campus pastor here at the school.
Yeah, we're in front of a live audience.
We are.
Glad to have everyone here.
It's good to see you guys. So we thought we'd get started with an icebreaker today, as always. We are trying to build community in your groups, and one way to kind of break the ice is with an icebreaker. So today is Harper's turn to ask the question.
Be good.
I'm worried about I never know what they're going to be. Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
I always go through, there's 3 questions on here, so I'm always looking at all 3 to see which one would be the best.
Okay.
What do you do whenever you read these?
I do the same, and sometimes I try to read the first one just for the spontaneity of it.
Yeah. So the first one, which would be easier to live without, cell phones or indoor plumbing? Why?
That's a good one. All right. So I'm going to go, it would be easier for me personally to live without cell phones, because I could get internet on my computer, I could have it, and it would probably do me well to not have my cell phone on so that it doesn't distract me all the time. But and I really like indoor plumbing. I don't like the idea of going outside to use thinking the outhouse. I don't want to do that. I like the convenience of that. Yeah. So
yeah, I think I feel like this is an easy question. Like, I'm going to go, which could you live without? A cell phone.
Right.
Like, which would be easier? Yeah, cell phone. Even looking at Airbnbs and stuff, like on VRB, they've got these fun stays where it's like a log cabin or like a tree house almost, and it doesn't have plumbing, and it's got like an outhouse. And I'm like, no, that's no longer fun, and I'm paying for this.
Right.
Like, why would I?
This is the 21st century. Even with me in college, when you had the bathroom down the hall, I didn't like that.
Yeah, that was a stretch. Yeah.
All right.
Not that I did that.
No. Well, take some time with your group to discuss what you could live without easier: indoor plumbing or cell phones. So in this week's sermon, Pastor Kivett started off the series in the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
And in it, he described really what the Beatitudes is all about. A lot of times we've heard different things. Like you and I were talking about it before we started filming this episode about that I had always heard the Beatitudes kind of like a staircase. You're poor in spirit, leads you to mourn for your sin, which leads you to be meek, which leads you to strive after, hunger and thirst after righteousness. And that's a good idea. But Pastor Kivett shared this week about the idea of that word blessed in the Greek, meaning congratulations. And so that Jesus is actually congratulating people when they get to these points.
Yeah. So
what we'd like to ask our group is, how does the idea of the Beatitudes being Jesus's congratulations to you change your way of viewing them?
Yeah, because a lot of times that can seem like another kind of a task thing to try to keep or try to do, and you feel this discouragement if you do not. But with understanding this differently, it is more of an encouragement than a kind of like a letdown, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a, yes, you're doing this well. You're doing this. Congratulations, and it's just a whole different way of looking at it instead of something to do rather than something to achieve.
Yeah, especially when we get to the blessed are you when you're persecuted. Like Jesus is literally saying, good for you when that's happening, because that's kind of an indicator of where you need to be. So it's good. Yeah. We'll take some time right now with your group to discuss how does the idea of these Beatitudes, these blesseds, being Jesus's way of congratulating you, and how does that change the way you view them?
Well, Pastor Kivett, as he talked about specifically, blessed are the poor in spirit, that first phrase in there, one of the things we talked about is this isn't just talking about at salvation, like realizing your need for salvation, but it's something that continues on into the sanctification process, into every day of your life instead of a one and done type of mentality. And so with thinking about this, one of the questions we want to ask is what ways does your spiritual bankruptcy show up in your everyday life? Because again, that's something to be carried on, not just at salvation and then it's over.
Yeah.
So what does that kind of look like every day carrying it on?
Yeah, and I'm reminded when we saw this in the sermon of J.D. Greer's statement of the gospel being not just the dining board, but it's the whole pool, that you're always recognizing that you're spiritually bankrupt and that you need grace, you need Christ. And so I thought that was a great point.
Oh yeah. Whereas I mean, it's one of those things of needing Christ, not just for the salvation, but for the sanctification as well, and the sustaining us through this as well. Yeah.
And maybe we could do something here where we could help out our groups. We've done this in the past where we answer and we kind of give it over to you and think, oh, okay, you'll take our answers. But I would like to share, I think for me, it's not just recognizing I need Jesus for my salvation. For me, it's I'm spiritually bankrupt in the way I treat people. Why is my first desire when somebody attacks me or when I feel threatened, why is my first reaction to go on defensive or to go on the offensive? It's because I'm spiritually bankrupt. And so I think this is something that goes all into pretty much every aspect of our life.
Oh yeah, and even going back to what we talked about last week,
yes,
with talking about the icebreaker, what makes you scream sometimes, and we talked about some of those things. And again, that comes from this kind of state of I care more about me than you. My first response is carnal instead of spiritual, and if we don't guard that, if we're not aware of this, then it can change how we interact with people.
That's right.
Well, take some time right now. Talk about this with your group. In what ways does your spiritual bankruptcy show up in your everyday life?
Well, Pastor Kivett also shared in his sermon when he talked about the different Beatitudes, he liked to end it with something because every Beatitude ends with a way that God is providing, that God is taking care. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for God is going to take care of you. Blessed are those who mourn, for God takes care of you. And we saw from that God is in the business of caring for his people. He's shown it all through the Old Testament with the people of Israel. He's shown it in the New Testament, caring for the church, especially in the early persecutions during the time of the writings of the New Testament. But what we'd like to do now is have a time as a group to talk about how has God shown you that recently?
Yeah, I mean, how has God provided for you? How is he taking care of you? It's some of those things that, again, in our carnal reaction with the spiritual bankruptcy, it's, well, if I am this way, if I am meek, if I am, poor in spirit, if I'm doing these things, who's taking care of me?
Yeah.
And it's that natural inclination to, you got to take care of yourself because no one else is going to.
Yeah.
And in a worldly mindset, in a worldview, that's absolutely true. But in our worldview of Christianity, we believe God is the one who's taking care of us. And he's the only one who can provide for our needs before we even know them many times. And so, as we see that, it's great for us to go back and remember. I was just reading through Joshua where they crossed the Jordan and they take those stones to remember, and they take them and build this. And he says, this is so that when your children see these and ask, what are these for? You're able to tell them and you're able to remind them. What is that in your life that you're able to point back to maybe others in your family or people around you? This is what God has done for me. Maybe you need this for yourself, just a reminder of how God has cared and provided for you.
Yeah, so take some time right now as a group to really brag on what God has done. These are great moments to really build, I think, community in your group. Take some time right now to discuss how has God shown you recently, or maybe even in the last few years, how God has taken care of you. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of The Pursuit Abroad. Who knows where we'll be next week, but you want to make sure to go ahead and tune in and watch that. As always, you can watch previous episodes of Pursuit, see where we've been by clicking the link provided on the screen.
Yeah, and go back and feel free to watch past sermon videos as well. You can find that on our YouTube page. You can also click to subscribe so you don't miss any videos when we put them out. It's been great being with you. We'll see you next week, and we're going to wave as the crowd applauds for us as we leave.